because of the apparent lack of comprehension of extreme poverty, the IEEE made a short video to try and help people understand it a little bit. So,
developing countries, extreme poverty and lack of resources make daily tasks very intensive. A simple meal often requires fetching water on foot from a borehole or stream miles away, and cooking is done with wood or charcoal. And because tasks are so labor intensive, there is little time to make money or create opportunities to put cash in circulation. With the right resources, people living in these remote communities will create new and better ways to work and live their lives. Most of these communities, nearly 800 million people on Earth, live without artificial light. That severely limits productive activities from dusk to dawn. Extreme poverty drives resilience and innovation, but limited infrastructure and access to affordable products imposes significant constraints. And safe, clean light sources must be easily accessible to these communities at extremely affordable prices. The alternative is usually poor quality, inferior products with very limited lifespan. But a small amount of light can be transformational. It allows people to go outside in the middle of the night and be able to spot a scorpion or snake and avoid a potential sting or deadly bite. It empowers kids to read and complete their homework and enables parents to advance their learning or run a small business. Whatever it is, light enables community advances. Intergenerational poverty recedes, inequality decreases, and more dreams are realized. With affordable light, people can go far beyond dreaming of things that will improve their lives, and they can thrive. Are you an inventor or entrepreneur with a passion to make a meaningful difference in people's lives? The IEEE Let's Make Light competition is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your ability to innovate and overcome the huge distribution challenge to get affordable lighting products into the hands of the extremely poor. Visit the website to learn more about the competition and submit your idea that will help people change their lives forever.
90% of what I'm going to say will already be evident to you, but sometimes I think we don't really think about it. We've all seen the picture of the Earth at night and the fantastic amount of light that we pour into space. And if you go into any big city, you know, light is everywhere. But once you get out into less industrialized areas where people have very little money, then light becomes something of a precious commodity. And if you've never lived in the dark, then if you have ever lived in the dark, then you will know that a tiny bit of light is absolutely transformational. So who are these quote forgotten people? Well, I've been fortunate to travel to East Africa, India. I spend a lot of time in West Africa. A few years ago, well, about 10 years ago now, I was in Medellin for a conference. But basically all over the world, there are people who either live in extreme poverty or have no access to light. So this is about 100 kilometers north of Mumbai in India. And there are several communities up there with no access to light. But you can see that their standard of living, right, is far greater than the people we saw in Burundi before. This is another extremely poor person in the north of Ghana. As you can see, she owns little more than the clothes she stands up in and a few cooking utensils. So these are the people that, you know, the competition is about lighting. And obviously it comes with a lot of challenges. This is the favelas outside Medellin. This was 10 years ago. So they may have electricity, but, you know, up and down these hills, there were a few wires, but most people were disconnected. Everybody knows that poverty generally falls upon women. You know, it is the women who suffer most because they have to go and collect water and wood, feed and clothe their kids, And when you don't have any mechanized transport, you have to carry everything on your head. And when you're very poor, you have to do everything by hand. It's worthwhile having a quick note. I'm sorry that this presentation is a bit Africa centric, but that's I suppose, what I know best. It's very sort of thoughtful just to think of just how much, the difference in energy is. So if you look at the sub-Saharan Africa, a population of 1.125 billion, then the energy use is less than a megawatt hour per person a year. And in the States, it's 12 megawatt hours per person per year. But if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, then this energy use is highly compartmentalized. For example, if you look at the bottom, you can see South Africa is fairly well lit, and you can see towns all over sub-Saharan Africa are lit. But if you go to somewhere like Burkina Faso, then they use 0.07 megawatt hours of electricity a year. So 0.6 of what somebody uses, the average person uses in the States. So this is the market, right, that we're addressing. And there's all sorts of numbers for how many people, don't have electricity. A lot of countries will tell you that people are connected because there's a pole that runs near somebody's community. There might be no wires on it, but it doesn't matter. As far as the government is concerned, it's connected. But if you think about it, there's no light. There's obviously no light for many towns because if you're in a rural area, there's no light anywhere. So you can't really do much after dark. I mean, kerosene was once used, but I haven't seen kerosene for about 10 years in very poor areas because they can't afford it. It's not available because it's too expensive, so nobody buys it. And then, of course, you have no connectivity. So, if you have no connectivity and no light, then governments tend to forget you because you're not important. So this all started in something like 2005-06. I used to take students to the north of Ghana, where I lived as a kid, which is sort of somehow why I'm here today. And you can see all these solar-powered lights in Wa, the regional capital of the Upper West. And they all look lovely, but they're absolute trash. They last for maybe a few weeks. And this was, I think, 2003-04, and they disappeared and they've never come back. Now it's almost impossible to buy a solar powered light source in this region. I was there a couple of months ago, and it's because what people can afford is of such low quality that nobody buys it. So in 2006, this is kind of how we started. How I came to, I suppose, know what I do. So I challenged a class in 2006 to design a lighting system for the poorest of the poor. A flashlight, general reading and studying, runs for 2 days on a single charge, costs less than $10 and is a must-have. In other words, it has to look nice. So of course I got a fair amount of pushback for giving first-year students the task of designing a flashlight or a torch, and I never knew that this was what I'd do in my retirement. But one of the first things that the class came up with was a shared power source. And this because in those days, solar panels were very expensive. Like a 70-watt panel was, I think it was like $350, $400. Each LED was something like $250, which is one of the reasons that lanterns that we chose had have a single light source. Anyway, we started, and on the right, you can see our first 3 pathetic lanterns, right? And it was really embarrassing but it was a start, and off we went. And as you can see, over the years, all sorts of designs have come up. And the thing common to these housings is that where possible, we try to use local materials, some with success, some not so much success. And through all this sort of dream, it's like, is it possible to design a lighting system, anyone, anywhere? Just having a solar panel there with maybe 100, 150, even 50 watts. And then how do you get it there? So the lighting system, you can't rely on any infrastructure. It's going to be used by people who don't even know what an on-off switch is. So it has to, no technical expertise. it's going to be used by people who have no idea about really how fragile things can be, because everything that they use, you know, comes from what's around them and is very robust. And because they have no money, it has to be as economic as possible. If you then extend this a bit, and these are all attributes which have been incorporated into the Let's Make Light competition, a lot of them are mutually exclusive. You know, low cost, has to be available, has to be durable, has to be maintainable, and it has to be sustainable. Now, if you think about basic amenities, water is now considered a basic human right. If light was considered a basic human right, it would be much easier to get light into the hands of these communities, but it isn't. So whether or not one can really deliver light to the poorest people on the planet without some kind of international subsidy, I think is an open debate. But so basically we started, and you can see the circuit on the right hand side. That was actually built under a tree, right, with a battery powered soldering iron. The kids in this picture had never seen a transistor resistor or anything before, but with gentle tutelage from my African colleague, who's actually out of the picture, they built this in a few hours, and I think 99.5% of them worked. And so this was kind of, you can make a lighting, you know, assemble a printed circuit board anywhere. Why bother doing that? Because it gives people a part in actually, you know, manufacturing the system. It's not something that comes from, you know, some foreign country or comes in the hands of a white man or a white woman or whatever. For the housing, we went to the local market, where, as you can see, there's a whole area dedicated to used plastic cartons. And on the bottom right, you can see that we have on the left is a hair relaxer tub. Next to it is a pill box, and then you need 3 bicycle spokes, and you basically have, a lantern housing. So the only thing that comes in for this bit of the light, right, is the circuit board and the components. We tried to source these locally, but the quality control still isn't good enough. And along the way, you know, this was built by people in universities, in polytechnics, and also in communities. Now, one of the other things is that, you know, you have to design the system so that you can basically deliver it anywhere. And some of these places are so remote that you will have to deliver it on somebody's head, on a bicycle, a canoe, a donkey, or whatever, which is why we try and use local resources as much as possible. If you have a fancy plasticized housing, which everybody says, oh, you should have that, then if it breaks, you know, that's the lamp gone. Or certainly that, you know, if the circuit board and everything is embedded in the plastic. If it isn't, then your light is broken and you're never able to repair it. So this is our Mark III charging station. In the bottom is a 12-volt lead acid battery. It isn't deep cycle because they're very difficult to obtain in Ghana, and very expensive. And then above it is, you've got a charge controller and various outlets, and you can see on the right hand side there's a couple of 12-volt socket outlets, and this is for charging cell phones. So one of the things that we've, you know, asking people to do is think about supply lines. So this is just happens to describe what we do. And you know, at the moment we import electronic components, printed circuit boards, as you can imagine, come from China, and assembly tools, and obviously instructions. The availability of tools is getting better, but if you want small tools for fairly fine circuit work, it's still easier to import them. But everything else, right, is local. And obviously, if you're doing this, it means that, you know, your control over quality, especially of the 6-volt lead acid battery, is a bit up and down, unless you have some kind of special arrangement. And then, you know, we're asking you to think about this also in terms of a business. If you are on the technology track, right, you don't have to think about this, but this should be in the back of your mind. There's no point in coming up with this fantastic light source only to find that, you know, it's so expensive, it's completely beyond the reach of everybody, or that it's has to be manufactured abroad, or it's unrepairable, things like that. One of the things is that, you know, if anybody's ever seen people getting a clean light source for the first time, it's really transformational, and it's a reward in itself. One of the things that, you know, if projects like this are going to have any chance of success at all, then, you know, community has to be engaged every step of the way, and that's you know, kind of a big problem. If you live in a town, you have to know somebody on the ground, you have to know what the culture of the community is, and everything. But, you know, again, having some fancy thing which you think you can just deliver isn't going to work. So quickly moving on now, you know, we've added cell phone charging, we've got a Pico projector, we've got sound, and this is like a Rolls-Royce box which I built during the pandemic, and this is one of the last ones we put in the field, and you can see there's a lot of cell phones charging there, and you can see all the lanterns on the left hand side. The whole thing may not look too pretty. You can see that the lanterns are taking a bit of a beating, but they work, and they've been there for, like, some of these communities have had them for 5 years, and if people don't meddle with them, everything keeps just going fine. If you look at the box in the middle, you can see that's little Pico grid with the battery in it, you know, and everything else. And on top of that, you can see one of the little projectors. And this means that, you know, you can have movie nights. And what does everybody want to watch? They want to watch Nollywood or Bollywood. And again, this just happens to be where we are. And this is done in the upper west region of Ghana, in a very small town called Wa. And the lanterns are partially made by the end user community, and this system is now, we can put it in the bush, right, and it just works. If you want something like this to work, then you can't keep going to all these remote communities, so you need to set up satellite communities which can then look after nearby communities. As I say, if people don't fiddle, there's really nothing to do. Perhaps remind people to dust off the solar panels and things like that. And if they don't fiddle about with the lantern, it's going to last. Then, of course, there's the question of payment. So we don't really have much time for this, but, you know, we now have 18 communities installed. We hope to have like 22 within 2 months. The cost of a 100 lantern system is about $3,000 installed, and that's not really paying any labor. So you can't get here without all sorts of help. So now we come to the competition, and this started a few years ago, and I won't bother telling you the story, but basically IEEE Future Directions, Georges Zizis, who's the director, said, why don't we have a competition, an affordable, accessible lighting system operational in impoverished, marginalized, forgotten communities across the globe. So that's how it started. And you may think, well, why? Well, these are some of the light sources that you can get now. And they're either much too expensive, right? Or they wouldn't last, you know, a week in some of these communities. They certainly wouldn't last a year because they're not designed for that sort of environment. But as they're mostly then much too expensive, or they're just not available. Yeah. So somebody once said, in principle, with the required resources, be comparatively easy to light the world, but only in a way that perpetuates waste and the inequity we seek to eliminate. So that's why we've asked people to think hard about a circular economy, and also need to think about, you know, materials usage in terms of energy. So, you know, whatever light source you design or whatever business you come up with, want to make sure that the energy is used, you know, most efficiently, and that means getting the light out as efficiently as possible. And I don't know how many people have heard of James Lovelock. He was the founder of Gaia, which was the postulate that everything on the planet Earth is interconnected. And in 2008, this was published in a very respectable scientific magazine. And I don't want to sound pessimistic, but climate change is significant and having an impact. So we see this as, ideal opportunity to fundamentally rethink artificial light in a very different resource constrained ecosystem. And this isn't, the poor people, it's that the whole world really needs to use light much more efficiently. So we have the Let's Make Light competition in 2024. I couldn't find a logo for that. So a smart light able to provide the most efficient illumination required by anyone, anywhere, without harm to animals or plants. Obviously, an ideal light source, could be used by itself or groups, provide different levels of lighting. In a way, that's the icing on the cake. We're looking for a useful source of light. And if it has lots of ability, then that's good. So there are last year we had 3 tracks, and it was basically technology, business, and implementation. And the technology, in a sense, is easy. How do you manufacture a light source in country? If you can you make it close to people? Do you try and do it without using expensive machinery, very efficient materials usage? And all this is on the website. So, but it's, it's your dream production facility, for want of a better word. Can you take a box basically and put it down in the middle of anywhere, and then bring the raw materials in, right? And basically anybody with a little bit of training can start making the light source. The business challenge, right, is in a way it's a combination of business. How do you get it from the factory? Well, sorry, it's how do you get it from the factory or the business into the hands of the end user? So you have distribution challenges, right, across the country. You have distribution in the sense of getting it from some hub right into the hands of these remote communities. And then how do you get people to pay? At the moment, we're only able to charge people less than 50 cents a month to charge their lanterns, because climate change, currency depreciation, all sorts of things are just driving these impoverished communities into the ground so that they have nothing. So, how much do they pay? How do you collect the money? How much do you pay the people collecting money? These are, in a way, that's a specialized part of the business challenge, as is the countrywide delivery. But as you will see, and as I've emphasized once, whichever part of this competition you decide to enter, we want you to be cognizant of all the other bits, not to think, yes, have I ticked all the boxes? It's like, is my solution, right, basically compliant, I suppose, with the principal aims of this? So there are some prizes. First prize, 3 months. I know it isn't a lot, but the idea of that is to provide people with some funds to keep going and go to the next stage. You'll get a 1-year membership to the IEEE. So last year we only awarded one prize because the overall level of the entries was disappointing, which is one of the reasons I hope that I'm here today. So again, if you sit back and think, what's the ideal lighting system, then these aren't new. They're all, self-evident, and they're all impossible to satisfy. So it's impossible to satisfy them all simultaneously. But this is, the blue skies, if you like, idea. And then when it comes to design, we tend to design not really thinking about the end user. not really thinking too much about resources and things like that. Well, here it's like turning design on its head and thinking about every input, right, to your final product. So competition overview, we've said design and manufacture, sales and distribution, end user engagement. And now I've got 3 mind maps, which I shared. I don't know whether you've got them, but I presume this presentation will be shared. And this is just a few, a mind map, trying to get people to think about different aspects of engineering. So, take the power source. Does each light have an individual power source? Is it communal? Are you going to rely on fossil fuel? Is it renewable? Manufacture, modular? Can you replicate it? Is it simple? How much does it cost to set up? Where do you get your goods from? Housing, is it attractive? How efficiently does the light get out? What materials does it use? Whoops, you need to keep going. So business, same sort of thing, marketing, finance, quality model, what sort of infrastructure do you need? And then in a way, this is all mixed up with the market track. Where do your end users live? How do you get there? What's their environment? Is the society stable, or is it in the middle of a conflict region? Lots of things to think about. This is the committee. Of course, in an ideal world, we'd use bioluminescence and microbial batteries, and we wouldn't be here because we'd have solved the problem. If a bit of light is transformational. One of the things, it can connect people, and intergenerational poverty, is still very much alive. If you can get, with light, people can get educated. If you've got cell phone charging, they have a network, they get connectivity. Rural depopulation is a problem. International migration is a problem. So can light solve all these things? No, but it could perhaps go some way towards. Okay, thank you.